Maraming salamat po. Napag-utusan po ako ni Attorney Colmenares to read his reaction to the two presenters. Dean Agabin's paper shatters a lot of misconception right now, right at the beginning statement when he said that the weaponization of the law is nothing new. The law has always been used against the poor and the dissenters, whether it is the Public Assembly Act used to imprison rallyists or the urban land reform law to demolish urban poor shanties. Dean Agabin then deals a blow against this obsession by some lawyers for all to unqualifiedly follow the rule of law when he declared that the rule of law as a principle is bereft of any substance unless it is anchored to a universal moral principle. Simply put, we cannot blindly insist on following the rule of law if the law is basically unfollowing the moral compass of justice. That is why people's lawyers usually use the rule of justice instead of the rule of law. Because even if the law says that the power to withdraw from the International Criminal Court is lodged in the President, or that a quo warranto can oust a Chief Justice, we must oppose it, despite the legal basis it manages to muster from the legislature or the judiciary because they are self-serving, unjust acts of President Duterte. While Dean Agabin maintains that the law has been previously weaponized against dissenters, he does not, I am sure, wish to minimize President Duterte's current use or abuse of the law to suppress dissent and violate human rights. The extent and scope of President Duterte's use of law against dissent is unparalleled, whether in the filing of sedition cases against the Vice President, a senator, and several bishops and lawyers, or the charges of murder against activists portrayed as communists, or the passing of laws that practically allows the opposition to be labeled terrorists, or drug trading case against a fiery senator because she dared investigate him for his death squads. Yesterday, the amendment to the anti-terrorism law passed the Senate on second reading. This law will most likely be used not for the terrorists, but for the dissenters who are labeled as terrorists. It might yet be this regime's ultimate weapon for lawfare. But President Duterte's lawfare soldiers take the cue from his legalistic jargon, who at a glance immediately shows his ignorance of the law, such as ordering the AFP to take over civilian agencies like customs, despite constitutional prohibition, swearing that the law exempts 70-year-olds like him from criminal punishment, or that rapists who are minors go scot-free because of a law advocated by a certain senator, or it is legal to arrest vapors and tambays. And yet, his subordinates follow his every whim in using the law to suppress dissent. Surely no one can disagree with Dean Agabin's argument that the rule of law in upholding basic rights and freedoms is meaningless without an independent judiciary. Worse, we cannot even consider anti-people laws passed by a Congress that trembles and finds no voice to object to a president that orders its members to impeach a Chief Justice or commands its members to disapprove a franchise of a TV station, both of which are purely legislative functions beyond the penumbra of executive functions. Members of the judiciary and the legislature who kowtow to the publicly dictated orders of the president because they are corrupt and expect benefits from being subservient to the executive, or they are cowards who crumble in the face of President Duterte's threats, form part of the weaponization of law. It is therefore imperative that our efforts for reform should not only be focused on President Duterte, but also on the system that allows him to reign with impunity. Dean Agabin correctly lays down the correct call. The preservation of human rights and basic freedoms ultimately lies in the hearts of the people, who are the only force that can end this nightmare that is Duterte. In the same way that Hitler managed to electrify the German people with his promise of national salvation and a 1,000-year Reich, President Duterte managed to get popular support with his promise of change. However, in the same way that Hitler and Mussolini were abandoned When the people of Germany and Italy realize the insanity of their populist promises, Duterte will also be abandoned when the economic hardships and political repression takes its toll on the masses suffering in extreme poverty under a tyrannical rule. The cracks have grown, and it is a matter of time when the people are intimidated no more. I will end with a reminder to the Duterte subordinates who jump to do his bidding every time he publicly threatens his perceived enemies, walang forever. Like all dictators throughout the world, the reign of terror ends. While they will fall when Duterte's reign ends, whether in 2022 or before, we will survive. We survived Marcos, we survived Arroyo, and we will survive Duterte. Bukas, luluhod din ang mga tala. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Teddy.